And so now we're going to move on to our K-12 panel. Providing all students with high quality primary and secondary education is critical to advancing our STEM workforce. Our next panel explores some of the collective challenges confronting K-12 STEM education, both in and out of the classroom, with a focus on the role that employers can and are playing in supporting students, their families, and educators. Today's panel will be moderated by Keisha Chandler, who is a Senior Implementation Manager for ASCD, the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, a STEMconnector member. Keisha, thank you so much for the work that you do to support educators and for your partnership. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. I appreciate being a partner with you at ASCD. We are dedicated and committed to providing excellence in learning, teaching, and leading so that every student could feel healthy, safe, engaged, challenged, and supported. And so with that, this amazing panel, to introduce yourselves, I'm just gonna start us off with a question and just dive into the space. So K-12 education in the United States is a very complex system, as we are well aware, with local government, states, and the federal government all operating in varying degrees of collaboration across the country. Optimal outcomes for students correlate strongly with income, while significant efforts have been made to increase equity and broadcast access to the STEM pathways and careers. Many students continue to face insurmountable barriers. So one aspect of networks like STEMconnector is that they enable an ecosystem approach that supports collaboration between equity-based shared goals. Ecosystems bring stakeholders such as from diverse viewpoints together, such as employers, educators, policymakers, and we that sit on this panel. So as you introduce yourself, and I want everyone to address this question, can you speak to how this ecosystem approach plays out in your work and provide some tangible examples of how collaboration across stakeholder groups enhances your work?
I can jump in if.
Thanks, Ron.
Ron Ottinger, Executive Director of STEM Next Opportunity Fund. We're the legacy organization of the Noyce Foundation. So great to see everyone. We've been working in the after school, out of school, and summer space for about 15 years. And then we helped start with Scott and a number of other members of a STEM funders network, the STEM Learning Ecosystems Community of Practice that's now in close to 100 communities throughout the country. And if we go back to the President's Commission on Science and Technology under President Obama, their report, Prepare and Inspire, STEM for K-12, really set the framework that you need both. You need to get kids motivated and inspired, which often happens in the after school realm, and you need to obviously prepare them for the rigors of STEM learning and STEM education. So you need both. And it's been our pleasure to work particularly on the after school, the inspire part, which is often missing in many of these efforts. So thanks for having me. Scott, do you want to jump in?
I'm happy to go next, and thank you to STEMconnector for hosting the panel. I'm Scott Heimlich. I'm the VP of the Amgen Foundation and a Director of Philanthropy at Amgen. I'm very proud to be part of some of the collaborations with Ron Ottinger through the STEM Funders Network. We've been part of 100K and 10 and other networks that have really collaborated to make a difference. I think, Keisha, the way I'd answer your question, though, is focus on our high school biotech program, which is called the Amgen Biotech Experience. That program happens because we have professional scientists at Amgen, along with educators, along with science education professionals, that all make it possible for us to support a series of hands-on labs in classrooms in Rhode Island and Tampa and Boston, Turkey, Germany, Tokyo, and elsewhere. But it doesn't happen, my scientists alone do not have the pedagogy, do not know how to, what goes on in classrooms. The educators don't have access to the latest biotech that might be happening in industry. And so again, it's a complex ecosystem that I think makes a lot of different programs successful, but we take that to heart in bringing the right folks together to make a difference in education and other fields. I will pass it to Alex.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Cervello. I'm the director in corporate social responsibility for Verizon, and I oversee our Verizon Innovative Learning program. And when I think of ecosystems, especially within Verizon Innovative Learning, we can't discount the fact that a school district is very much an ecosystem. And I'm really proud of the fact that Verizon Innovative Learning looks at all of those different layers to build a sustainable program. So not only do we bring the technology and access to students and the comprehensive professional development to teachers, but we also look at how do we work with district and school leadership to create sustainable systems for a successful one-to-one program moving forward. But in building that program, we really build it with all of those stakeholders rather than for them. So we have an advisory panel made up of teachers and district administrators and school administrators that really help us troubleshoot and ideate and constantly enhance our program. And I'm really excited because we've been able to bring student voice into it with our 5G labs. So these labs are equipped with emerging technology and 5G connectivity. Students actually have the opportunity to collaborate with developers to create ed tech solutions that really speak to them. So they have a real opportunity to be part of this pilot group and develop programs alongside these innovators that are eventually going to be used in schools across the country. So just really excited to see how we take all of those different stakeholders across the team. I'll pass it over to Doug.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Doug Henderson. I'm the Director of STEAM and CTE for Verde Unified in Riverside, California. So like Alex just mentioned, there is a ecosystem, and a K-12 system is a complete ecosystem. So part of what I do is take what I learned from local industry, from workforce. What are the needs that are out there, and then backwards map that all the way to 5-year-olds. Like, what does it look like in kinder? What does it look like in TK? So when we have a company that's nearby, so they make the curved front edge of wings for airplanes, right? So if any airplane you've been on, they made it so it comes out of my local area here. So I go and visit them and I say, what do you want them to do? And they say, I need them to run this machine and I need them to do these things. Then I say, okay, well, I can't afford that machine in a classroom. So what does it look like in my high school? It looks like a smaller machine. What does it look like in 5th grade? It looks like, a Lego robotics competition. What does it look like in kinder? It might also still be Lego robotics. It's collaboration, solving problems. It's all these things. And those are kind of the biggest issues that most industry tell me about. Is it's the problem solving capabilities that that kids don't come in with that inherent knowledge. So I'm providing opportunities, whether it's through gardens, whether it's 3D printing, whether it's, Tinkercad. It looks different at all different ages, but when kids start using the exact same skill that they're going to need in the local workforce, which is, when an example of coding and robotics, if you didn't get the desired output that you wanted, your input was wrong. So they understand input, output, that kind of stuff, and they understand it inherently starting at 5 years old. And then my job is to make those opportunities available for kids. So it's the underlying skill that they learn. And then I am preparing those kids when they graduate from me at 18 years old to go to a local manufacturer, a local business, and they have the skills that are needed to compete in the local workforce. So good to be here this morning.
Thank you all for sharing. And I'm hearing networks and partnerships as the theme, and then also remembering students are our most important stakeholders. So thank you for that, Doug. We are just about 1 year into the Biden administration, and those of us who have been doing this for a while are aware that a presidential administration can support STEM education in ways that can be transformative. Ron, this question is for you. The STEM Next Opportunity Fund supports fellows in federal government agencies to support STEM education. Can you talk about what your colleagues in these agencies are seeing and any opportunities that could be realized?
Thank you for that question, Keisha. And in addition to the Million Girls Moonshot, our gender equity initiative in all 50 states, we really have begun to focus on the federal agencies. And we made so much headway under President Obama, who had STEM education as one of his major priorities, and now, President Biden and Vice President Harris have made gender equity and equity in general and diversity a priority in their administration, including STEM learning. We have found through our federal agency fellowship effort at STEMnext that companies and foundations and others who share a common mission can help advance these agendas by helping support a fellow in the administration. So we now have 2 fellows at the Department of Education, one who focuses on STEM, and particularly STEM in the after school and out of school realm, as well as in school, and one who's focused on summer learning and after school. We have one fellow now at the White House at the Office of Science and Technology Policy, where the major policy decisions are made, and Scott and Amgen are helping support the fellow there, and we hope to have a second fellow there shortly. And we just placed a fellow at the Department of Labor because obviously the workforce issues are so critical, and they are really focused on innovation. So this is a high leverage. I'm not touting this to sell anybody, but it's a high leverage opportunity to both help the mission of what we all believe in and care about, and help the administration further the agenda that is very much aligned to our work.
Thank you for that. Now to you, Alex. Verizon Innovative Learning Schools are across the country with over 500 schools. This is an enormous effort to engage directly with schools and provide resources that can support student learning and close the digital divide. Can you share any lessons learned for our audience about how this program has been such a huge success?
Thank you for that question. It's really incredible to think that we started with 8 schools in 2014 and have now grown to over 500. We had a goal originally of reaching 350 by 2021. So I am so proud of the team for exceeding that. First of all, we would have not been able to scale so successfully without our nonprofit partner, Digital Promise, and their willingness to really tinker with this program from cohort to cohort. And I have to also commend them for not shying away from the scale, as we said, how about 100 more schools? And then how about 250 more schools? And just continuing to say, sure, let's continue doing it. I think one of the things is over the years, we found this really important sweet spot of evergreen systems that every school in our program would have, and personalized aspects that would be tailored to each school. And we found that through a really robust measurement and evaluation system. So with our measurement and evaluation system, we have formal evaluations that we do. Digital Promise obviously does much more frequent touch points. And we look at that annually, and we really look at what's working, what's not working, what do we need to sunset, what do we need to enhance. And we've been able to do that with every single cohort, and Digital Promise has been open to this experimentation with us. So I think we finally have a program that we're really proud of scaling out even further. Secondly, I can't deny the fact that the digitization of resources has really impacted our reach. And we made that pivot from in-person to virtual PD, like many others on this call have done. And finally, and I think this is actually what's really important, is that we built this program with a laser focus on closing the digital divide. It has been and will be our primary focus. Now, obviously, closing the digital divide is the only area of need in K-12 education, but it's one that aligns with Verizon's broader goal of fostering digital inclusion and building a program with a very strong end goal that allows us to go deep into one issue has enabled us to do all that ideation and constant reevaluation that I mentioned earlier.
Awesome, thank you so much. So kind of leaning into that career, that shift to the workplace, creating STEM career pathways is often cited as a great way to encourage employers and educators to collaborate for the benefit of students, employers, and communities. pathways support students' pursuit of STEM and increase access to opportunities like work-based learning, research, and employability skill development. Doug, Verde Unified has been extremely active in advancing employer engagement to support a pathway approach, and you spoke to this a little earlier. Can you speak to some of the tangible benefits that this work has brought to your students and community?
Of course, yeah. So this is and I always tell people when they ask me questions about how this has gone, it's taken me 6 years. It's a building relationships with, I start with the economic development teams in the cities, and they put me in contact with the businesses, and, shy of walking up and down the streets, knocking on doors and saying to them, hey, I've got 20,000 of your next employees. What do you want them to know? Making sure they understand, like some people think I'm always asking for money, and you're like, no, I don't need the money. I just need to know, what do you want my kids to know? And I'll take care of the rest. And so it's that conversation of making sure that we are current, we have modern equipment, we are providing the actual skills they need. So I think one of the advantages that these partnerships with the companies provide is some of our teachers have been CTE teachers, have been working in engineering, teaching in engineering for 15 years. Well, engineering has changed maybe a little in the last 15 years. So how do we keep them up to date? In ICT, we have people. I have a cybersecurity teacher who was in the industry 20 years ago. So obviously in the IT industry, that's changed a whole lot. It's a completely different industry than it was 20 years ago. So using partners to allow them to go and do some sort of job shadowing, do some summer internships where the teacher can actually make sure they are current and they are upskilled, so that they are actually teaching to the actually what the industry needs out there and not what they learned 20 years ago. Another big benefit that we do out of that is I always ask them, what concrete technical skill do you need them to know? I mean, obviously we get the soft skill comment all the time, is technical skills. And then I go find actual, and this is the big goal that I have. I want kids to graduate with a certification on their resume that actually helps them get a job. And I always tell the kids, like, I'm paying, right? So I'm buying this one. So once you graduate out of high school, it's on you. So it is everything from all of our Adobe Premiere and Photoshop and Illustrator, because that's a real thing. It is CompTIA, it is Cisco Essentials. It's all kinds of certifications that we're trying to provide so that kids, when they graduate, have what they need to go get an entry-level job. And if they want to continue on with school, they can continue on with school, but they have that choice when they're graduating. So making sure that they have something that will help them get a job in the local workforce. And then I think the other big thing is making sure that we modify our pathways as needed. Meaning, I use this example. We had a pathway and it was great. The kids loved it. It was creating floral arrangements. So we were doing and so I was like, according to the job reports I see, there's not a lot of jobs in arranging floral arrangements. So let's switch that to something else. And now we have things like we have 980 Cabernet Sauvignon plants in the ground. We have our own vineyard, and we're producing, well, we're not producing the wine, we're partnering with the local winery. And so rather than making floral arrangements, we're still in the agriculture business, because ag is big business in California. But we shifted our approach, and we're making sure, because we're close to Temecula, which is a huge winery area, and we're preparing kids for jobs there. So just making sure that everybody is current with what's actually needed out there in the workforce, and kids graduate with the skills that they need. I think that is the biggest thing that these partnerships and conversations with companies has provided for our kids and our teachers.
Wow, thank you for sharing. And all I can say is, where were you 30 plus years ago when I was a K-12 student? All right, so everyone, anyone can answer this, but in your respective organizations, can you provide any examples of how pathways are supporting increased collaboration?
I'm happy to take that. Pathways increasing, so there's different ways to think of a pathway, but essentially, when we think of a job category, if I'm going to go to virtual for a quick second here, because similar to Alex, we do a lot of the in-person, we do a lot in the virtual space. But with regard to pathways, picking up on what Doug just spoke about, when you can focus regionally on a regional workforce ecosystem and you bring the players together, and so you have education that lines up with jobs that are available in that particular area, that can be ideal from both the education side and the workforce side. And we've done that virtually on Lab Exchange and other platforms in different ways. We've done that through the STEM ecosystems that Ron brought up back at the beginning of the call. And I think that those pathways are really critical. While there's different ways to define pathways, I'd like to think of it as, what is the way to go from education and the world of learning to the world of work? And we all need to do a better job to make sure that that articulation of how you do so is clear for all. Ron?
I would just jump in and compliment what Scott just said. You know, a couple of things. One, starting in middle school with career awareness is so important because so many kids don't have a clue, you know, what they might be interested in if a family member is not, you know, in a STEM job. So we work with Jobs for the Future, JFF, with the Possible Futures, Possible Selves STEM units, which work in or out of school. So, you know, it's one thing to consider. We also, you know, in our Million Girls Moonshot, have a big focus on volunteers, role models and mentors. And I think Doug just talked about that a little bit, and Scott and Alex as well, particularly for young girls and for kids who haven't experienced these jobs before. Seeing someone like themselves in these industries are so successful, you know, so important, really critical. And so, you know, in Million Girls Moonshot, we've started with Gabby Gonzalez, who I think is on the call from the Intel Foundation, and really working through what it takes to, you know, connect volunteers with programming both in school and out of school. So a couple of different elements to enhance what Scott said.
I'll just jump in from the Verizon side. We've partnered with Generation to build out Skill Forward, which is our reskilling and upskilling program. And we provide the resources for multiple career pathways, but we also added a step beyond pathway with a Thrive internship that's actually at Verizon. So we began that in June of this year, and that's been an incredible partnership between human resources, Generation, the various business units, and graduates from that Generation program actually begin 12-month apprenticeships within Verizon, where it combines that on-the-job experience with the supportive curriculum to really build those skills out further. What I will say is that the reskilling and upskilling work is definitely something that we're looking at. What are the opportunities with our high schools that we have within bills? Where is this really a viable option for students post-graduation to be an alternative to, let's say, a 4-year degree or any other higher education?
Thank you for sharing.
Keisha, can I jump in?
I'm sorry, okay. Doug, absolutely.
No, so I think one of the things when we talk about the future, so we've kind of been talking about things we have been doing, and this question kind of made me think of some of the as a K-12 person, here's what I'm going to need from all the companies going forward, and that is access to you, right? So when I forget to mention, I think it might have been Alex, being able to see someone like you in that industry. So we know that we're starting to lose girls interested in that STEM field down in 3rd and 4th grade. So we start exposing to types of careers at an early age, and we have all these activities. We could take them on field trips starting in 4th grade to go see what's happening out there and speak to engineers, being able to kind of allow them to do that. And I know I have kids that are like, hey, I'm going to be an engineer. And you're like, which one? Like, there's mechanical, there's chemical, there's like which kind? They're like, I don't know. Well, how about we arrange to go talk to an engineer? Let's go see some engineers. What type of engineer do you want to be? And start having those conversations at an early age. Because like Ron mentioned, middle school, we got to start talking about it in middle school, because in starting in high school, it's time to start looking at stuff and start exploring some of these things, which is where the industry partners come in, where we really need some of that access to you guys and your facilities, so that we can keep our kids interested in some of these STEM fields so they don't disappear, especially as a as a district where I have 84% of my kids are low socioeconomic, and 82% of them are Hispanic or are African American. So it's definitely a population that we need to increase their presence in the STEM fields. And so that's kind of a future look to it, is we need your help there. So.
Thank you, Doug. That's exactly where I was going with the awareness of the various careers. And you are sliding us into our next question around equity and access. And so as the lone member on this panel who identifies as a Black woman, one of the keys to unlocking equity in K-12 education is increasing access to the resources that enable students to explore and learn. So many great programs remain out of reach to economically marginalized students, even if the programs are themselves free. So I'm going to specifically ask Scott and Ron these next two questions, but then I want everyone to start thinking about how we broaden our reach. So Scott, can you speak to how your work at the Amgen Foundation aims to overcome these barriers to access?
Sure, and I think equity and access is at the heart of what the Amgen Foundation does. It's in fact, in many reasons, why we exist as a foundation that was set up by the company many, many years ago. I want to go back for a second to something Alex said earlier, which is he mentioned in talking about the Verizon program, he said it was built for, it was designed for. That doesn't mean you can't take something existing, like Doug said, where he said, hey, we learned about local wineries and we made an adjustment. But when we look, if I just talk about Lab Exchange for a second, which is a virtual online platform for learning science and engaging in science and doing so in an authentic manner, it was built for access. It was designed for that. From the very beginning, 3 years before it launched, the idea was, how do you get science into every child's classrooms, regardless of where they are? And I'll give you a tangible example. There's some pretty fantastic simulations on Lab Exchange that allow you to engage in scientific techniques. Those simulations could have been so incredible that a student in a rural area in Verde Unified School District, and forgive me, I don't know if that's a rural area or not, but might have not been able to download that on their cell phone. So you have this incredible asset that cannot be used because it's too fancy. You have to get to a university campus or a library in order to download it. So the simulations were designed not just to be cutting edge and to let students authentically engage and make mistakes, but they were designed to be lightweight so that it could be downloaded. That's one example of steps that were taken intentionally and purposely in thinking about equity and access. The one other thing I'll mention is that on that platform, you can't just engage in science, you need to see people that look like you in science. And so there's a whole other content type called narratives, where we've partnered with I Am a Scientist and many other organizations to place narratives of folks from all different backgrounds, so that a teacher that wants to leverage the platform, you're not just engaging your folks in science on a free platform that is free for anyone, but, and I hear you, it can't just be free, you have to take more steps, but there are also stories of the types of things that Doug spoke about, where you can see someone that looks like you. If you can't see someone that looks like you in a particular career, you're not going to think that's for you. Let me stop there and pass it to Ron.
Thanks, Scott. That was powerful. You know, STEMnext, in our mission statement, we talk about you know, building inclusion and opportunity for millions of young people in STEM and closing the gender gap in STEM careers. You know, in everything we do, that is the focus. In Million Girls Moonshot in all 50 states, working with the statewide after-school networks. You know, we're working with Boys and Girls Clubs, with Girls Inc., with Girl Scouts, with you know, 4-H, the organizations that are working with kids on the ground and who know the kids well, and who can then, you know, we're helping them build their STEM capacity, and then connecting to organizations, you know, in every community in the country, which, you know, is something that we're working on over the next 5 years in Million Girls Moonshot. One of the areas that we've become known for is our family engagement in STEM work. And I think we know that parents in particular can either encourage their kids or discourage their kids in STEM learning early on. And there's a prevailing attitude the public agenda picked up on 7 or 8 years ago in a national survey, where most parents feel that STEM is important, just not for me or my kid. So many families, are afraid of math and say, I can't help you with your homework. So we've really developed a whole body of work on working with families from all backgrounds, immigrants, folks in communities who've not been involved with STEM as they should in the past, and particularly in different communities for fathers to encourage their daughters, to get engaged with STEM. It was interesting, last point, talking to the Girl Scouts leadership in STEM, they said we spent 100 years keeping fathers out of Girl Scouts, and now we realize how important fathers are now that we're involved in STEM learning, and so they've started to bring fathers, into the troops. So family engagement is often an afterthought, but we're bringing it to the forefront and saying you've got to intentionally design family engagement strategies into your work, if you really hope to have kids who've been left out of the STEM economy really persist and pursue.
Thank you for sharing. We have 3 minutes left, approximately 2.5. So if you had to give a 34-second elevator pitch, closing words around embedding equity and access in the K-12 STEM ecosystem, what are your final parting 34-second words?
Well, I want to say, I'm gonna try for 34 seconds, but I'm not good at it. As soon as you let me on mic, I'm good. Okay, so this last year we had 8 kids who were offered internships and apprenticeships in local manufacturing plants straight out of their manufacturing classroom, and all 8 of them declined. And so my mind was blown, like, wait a minute, but we made the opportunity. It was there. We got it, right? And then that's when it started to dawn on me that if kids haven't seen themselves in this field, there's a certain amount of imposter syndrome. Yeah, you don't really want me. I mean, like, I don't think it's really me you're looking for, because they don't see themselves. So I think that's kind of in the equity and access, being able to see themselves, because now that I've seen it in real life, that it's real, like the imposter syndrome, and they did just flat out didn't accept it. And so now we're kind of reshifting our focus into, hey, maybe we need to start earlier with the exposure to these careers, because then maybe by the time they're a junior and senior, they actually do see themselves, and now they're accepting those kinds of things. So access is not the only thing that we need in this thing.
Thank you. Alex, Scott, or Ron?
I'll go. I just go back to being intentional. Sorry, that wasn't a word. Being intentional. It's not just going to happen. You can look at the inequities in education and so many other things across U.S. society today. We need to take intentional steps to mitigate those, to focus resources in different ways. When you design that from the beginning, you say what it is I want to achieve. You can then work backwards in figuring out the intervention, figuring out how you're going to define success, how you're going to measure success, but it's not just going to happen. I think that's the biggest. It will happen when folks are intentional, and it is designed, and it is measured, and that can translate into many different things. With one of our programs, we started looking at and counting the number of Title I schools that participated. Again, many other examples. I think that's probably 34 seconds. I will shut up.
And I'll only take 15 to say, really going back to the ecosystem idea, and to Scott's point, who knows the kids? Parents know the kids. The Y or the Boys and Girls Clubs know the kids. We need all of the sectors to be coming together. Schools can't do it alone. Kids are only in school 20% of their day.
Yeah. And I would also say, I think, just to kind of echo what everyone said, I think the intentionality is important. and bringing in those stakeholders as much as possible and making sure that you are developing a solution with them, rather than coming in and saying, we know exactly what you need for equity and access, here it is. But ironically, we didn't include you in the development of this equitable program. So I think it's just always important for us to continue that conversation and ensure that you're having that conversation with a diverse group of schools, not just speaking to your child's school or the school down the block, but when you look at the national landscape, the variety of issues that arise are very stark.
Intentional, involving stakeholders, and having students see themselves as early as possible. Thank you all for this amazing conversation. I appreciate being invited to the table.
Thank you, Keisha.
Thank you. We appreciate being invited as well.
Yeah, thank you much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. That was a great discussion. Admire all of you and the work that you do, and a lot of the folks that I see chiming in here too. There's just a lot of great resources that are out there and insights. So we're gonna keep moving on. Thank you all so much, and Keisha, great job. So we are going to take a brief break right now, stop for about 10 minutes. Actually, it'll be more like 8 minutes. So we will see you shortly. Stand by. Thank you.